This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature about this.
And look, Aaron, those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that.
So here's something you don't see every day. Gavin Newsom actually told the truth. Shocking, right? You almost want to rewind the footage just to confirm it really happened. Because if we're being real, California's governor isn't famous for blunt honesty. He's famous for polish, careful spin, and lines rehearsed to perfection. But this time, he slipped. On Bill Maher's show, of all places, Newsom admitted something his party usually avoids. Democrats have a problem. He acknowledged cancel culture exists. He even nodded along to the idea that if Democrats don't change course, they could be staring down permanent minority status. Did he really just say that? Yes. And Maher's face gave it away. He looked as surprised as anyone watching at home. Think about the rarity here. Newsom, the man who usually dances around accountability, actually said, "I agree." For a politician who built his career on optics, that's like spotting lightning in a bottle. But let's not crown him a truth-teller overnight. Newsom didn't climb the ranks in California by being genuine. He got there by smoothing over cracks, selling an image, and promising the dream while the reality crumbled behind him. And that's why this admission matters. Because when someone so carefully scripted lets the mask slip, even briefly, it tells you the pressure inside his own party is very, very real.
John Fetterman was in the news today. He said, if we're talking about the Democratic Party, he said, if we don't get our shit together, we're going to be a permanent minority.
I agree.
And I see you're doing something about it. I applaud it. I think it's great. You've got this podcast. You're talking to people. You know, it's amazing to me that even that is controversial to some people. They call it platforming. If you talk to someone you don't agree with.
Yeah.
I feel like this country is divided into owners and healers. People who think you can own the other side.
So what's the angle? That's the real question. Because in politics, nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Do I think Gavin Newsom suddenly discovered a love for blunt honesty? Not for a second. What I see is strategy, a man testing out a new script. Newsom knows California under his leadership is a mess. Homelessness continues to spiral. Businesses have packed up and left. Crime rates unsettle communities. Families struggle with sky-high taxes and suffocating housing costs. His glossy reputation is wearing thin, and he knows it. So what's the plan? Reinvention. The governor, who's long been criticized as overpolished, now wants to pitch himself as a unifier, almost like America's self-appointed therapist. And his new tool for this reinvention? Not a policy. Not a bold reform. A podcast. Yes, really. The pitch is simple. I'll heal America with conversations. But let's be clear. That's not leadership. That's branding. Nobody is tuning in to be healed by a politician. They're tuning in because Newsom is laying the groundwork for his next big audition, 2028. That's the real project here. Everything else is theater.
Gavin Newsom owned DeSantis.
Yeah.
DeSantis destroyed Gavin Newsom. Yeah. Or people who want to talk and heal. And I feel like the next president's going to be, at least if it comes from this party, the Democratic Party, someone who wants to talk and heal. And I feel like we're doing that.
Now, let's unpack this podcast idea. Newsom slips it into conversations like it's casual, but the delivery gives him away. It's not casual, it's calculated. He wants the podcast to serve as his reset button, proof he can sit across from political opponents and build bridges. He even bragged about bringing on controversial names like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. But let's not confuse that with bravery. That's not about truth-seeking. That's about optics. It's about filming what amounts to a political audition tape dressed up as dialogue. And here's where it gets interesting. While trying to play healer-in-chief, Newsom accidentally admitted something huge. The Democratic brand is toxic. Not implied. Not hinted. He flat out said it. That wasn't just a line. It was an unintentional confession. And for a politician like Newsom, confessions are never random. They reveal what he knows deep down but won't usually say aloud.
Really been interesting, the reaction to the podcast. I mean, we had some controversial figures on, I'll acknowledge that, and Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and some others. But you're right. I mean, this idea that we can't even have a conversation with the other side.
You have to. They won.
Thank you. That's it. Bottom line. And by the way, or the notion we just have to continue to talk to ourselves or we're in the same damn echo chamber. These guys are crushing us. The Democratic brand is toxic, right?
Picture the irony. The very man who helped make the Democratic brand toxic is now warning everyone else that the brand is, in fact, toxic. That's like an arsonist returning to the scene of the fire and shaking his head at the flames. And let's not forget, Newsom has a long record of bending reality to fit his narrative. Remember when he swore no one in his office ever used the word latinx? He said it with a straight face, as if the word was completely foreign to him. But the evidence told a different story: videos, speeches, posts. He had used it himself, repeatedly. That's classic Newsom: deny, deflect, and distract. When the facts don't serve him, he simply repackages the story. Which is why his sudden willingness to call out the toxicity of his own party feels less like growth and more like performance.
Next, just 2 weeks ago, here's what he said about it.
By the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree?
where did that even
go? No more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
But there was a person who used Latinx. It was actually a really important person. It was him. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, these aren't minor shifts. These are progressive issues that Gavin Newsom used to champion until fairly recently. And now he's not just walking away from them. He's sort of acting like they were never legitimate with that clip talking about Latinx.
And that's what makes this moment stand out. Gavin Newsom, the master of pretending reality doesn't exist, suddenly acknowledged three things. Democrats are losing ground, cancel culture is real, and the brand is toxic. For a brief second, it felt like spotting a unicorn in San Francisco, rare, dazzling, and probably gone before you can blink. But let's not kid ourselves. One honest moment doesn't undo years of carefully crafted spin. California, under Newsom, has become a case study in failed governance. Homelessness has exploded. Crime rattles neighborhoods. Families are priced out. Businesses continue to flee. That's the legacy he built.
And look, Aaron, those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that.
If Newsom truly wants to talk about accountability, there's an obvious place to start: himself. Before telling Democrats how to rebrand or what pitfalls to avoid, maybe he should look at the chaos in his own backyard. Own up to California's decline. Acknowledge the exodus of families and companies. Admit the policies that drove costs so high that people had no choice but to leave. Until he does that, every speech about accountability rings hollow. It's not leadership. It's rehearsed ambition. And the audience knows the difference.
This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature.
Now let's get real. Does anyone actually see Gavin Newsom winning a national election? Honestly, the man struggles to manage his own state. Voters in the Midwest or South aren't clamoring for California's brand of politics: high taxes, loose crime policies, and culture wars. They're not waiting for Newsom to heal them with sound bites and a podcast. They want results. And here's the twist. Even as Newsom tries to polish his image as a healer, he couldn't resist throwing shade. Did you catch his subtle jab at Vice President Kamala Harris? He made comments about Democrats being too judgmental, too circular, and not making sense. If that sounds like anyone, it's Harris, famous for her word salads. That wasn't random. That was targeted. It's a glimpse at what's coming: fractures inside the Democratic Party. Newsom versus Harris isn't a wild theory. It's an eventual showdown. The cracks are showing already, and moments like this only widen them.
We had a high water mark 2 weeks ago, and that was a CNN poll at 29% favorability. It's dropped in the NBC poll down to 27%. It's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense. And I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots. I'm not looking to put a spoke in the wheel of their, or at least a crowbar in the spokes of their wheel to trip them up, to your point. And I think it's important. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should be.
Here's the part that deserves more attention. Bill Maher. Newsom is usually one of the most scripted politicians in America. He doesn't make mistakes, doesn't let his guard down. Yet somehow, Maher boxed him in enough that he confessed what most Democrats won't admit out loud. And that's exactly why so many in the party avoid Maher's show. He doesn't toss softballs. He pushes. He digs. And eventually, his guests either deflect endlessly or they slip. That's what happened here. Maher cracked the armor just enough for Newsom to reveal what he really thinks. Now imagine if the rest of the Democratic elite were pressed the same way. If someone could make Newsom confess the brand is toxic, what would others say under the same heat? That's the nightmare scenario for party leadership, because once the mask slips, the audience sees the truth behind the performance. And for Newsom, what's behind the mask isn't healing, it's hypocrisy.
I was on KBLA yesterday, with my friend Tavis Smiley. I'm an investor and a supporter of that station. And he said, who do you want for running president? I mentioned, I think you'd be good at the job. Not this year, we know. No, I know. But he said, I don't think he could win. I don't think he could win. He's too progressive coming from this state and what he's done in this state to win in any southern state, any red.
At the end of the day, here's the bottom line. Gavin Newsom's sudden moment of honesty doesn't rewrite his record. California is still collapsing under his leadership. He's still the governor who presided over an exodus of families, businesses, and sanity from the Golden State. This podcast he keeps hyping isn't about unity. It's marketing. His brand of progressive politics isn't the solution, it's the warning. And if Democrats are looking to Newsom as their next rising star, buckle up. Because this isn't the cure, it's the symptom of a deeper problem. The cracks in the image are starting to show. And when even Newsom admits the truth, you know the problems run deeper than anyone wants to admit. So now I'll put the question back to you. Do you believe Gavin's sudden honesty was genuine, or just another calculated move from a career politician prepping for 2028? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And if you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs the context. Because trust me, this conversation is only getting started.